is. I just kind of want to let you guys know the plan for today because it's kind of a unconventional day. Um, so, uh, so this is the class schedule that I have. So Isaac will present for the first 10, 15 minutes. And then I figured you guys could get into your groups real quick and breakout rooms maybe. To kind of talk about and plan like what you're going to tell the class, and then each group will get like 5 minutes to kind of say, okay, here's the group that I kind of researched, and here's some of the things that have happened to them historically. And then like 10:25 to 10:30 we'll like vote for the most oppressed group, and we'll kind of talk about why this is problematic. And then the last 10 minutes of class, Alicia and Josiah will tell us about them and what they do. Okay, this is the plan. It's the loose plan. It's okay if we go a little over, but we'll try not to do too much. Okay. All right. So a few more minutes. If you can't remember your group, BTW, if you can't remember your group, go to Canvas, go to announcements, and those are like the 5 groups and wherever you fall. Okay. Oh, also, so participant observations were due Tuesday, but I understand that at this point in the semester, things are getting kind of crazy and I'm feeling the burnout. So I imagine you are too. If you didn't get it in, take as much time you need to complete it, but still kind of complete it and get it in when you can. Okay. All right. And if you have any questions about it or like are kind of completely lost, Hannah is an awesome resource. She's written one before. She can help you out. Also, my office hours are on Wednesdays. So, if you're totally blocked, talk to one of us. Okay. There's like 1 more minute. Okay. So if you're only getting in now, our plan is to kind of do quiz, And then, well, we did that. Isaac's going to present. You're going to kind of talk together as a group to kind of put together your stuff. You're going to do a short presentation each group for like 5-ish minutes. I know Martha's at the doctor's office, so depending on where you're at, Martha, maybe your group could go first or last, or we'll try to make sure you get in here. And then we'll do like a kind of debrief about why the Oppression Olympics is problematic. And then Alicia and Josiah are going to talk to us about the Office for Diversity and Inclusion. Okay. All right, Isaac, you should be able to share your screen.
Where do I do that? Oh, just kidding. Alrighty. I'm Isaac Bushy. I wear glasses so you guys think I'm smarter than I am. And today I'll present to you guys Oppression Olympics. So because I can't word good most of the time, I grabbed a professor telling you what Oppression Olympics are.
Why would we think that the African American community would be concerned about the gay community or the LGBT community perhaps co-opting or co-modifying or leapfrogging over the African American community in trying to get their rights?
We don't think that race has necessarily been tackled, and if they go on to focus on the LGBTQ community, then they're going to pay all of their attention on that.
Absolutely. There's this idea that America can't pay attention to more than one social movement at a time. The Oppression Olympics is a cognitive filter that many of us carry around in our heads unknowingly. And so I use the term Oppression Olympics as an evocative way to kind of explain how groups in politics, particularly racial and ethnic groups or gender groups, really think that they have to pit themselves against each other in order to actually succeed in politics. Leapfrog paranoia makes it really easy to focus on each other as the problem, right? So the problem is this other group, the problem is this other person, rather than focusing on how we transform the system. We use intersectionality as an antidote to the Oppression Olympics because it really refocuses how we talk about ourselves, how we talk about group interactions, and how we talk about the way in which political institutions function in American society. So it's the intersections that allow us to actually see the areas of gray. And so when we talk about intersectionality, we're actually trying to build political efficacy through the strategic use of solidarity, through the strategic use of coalition politics, through the strategic setting aside of zero-sum thinking.
And this is kind of what I got from the video. Didn't realize my face would be in the way. First, it's her quote. There's this idea that America can't pay attention to more than one social movement at a time. And you don't think about it, but it's kind of true. We all have this sort of one-track mind when in reality, companies and our future jobs, you all work together doing different things to make one cohesive product. It doesn't really make sense. And as you said, racial, ethnic, gender groups, they all pit themselves against each other, which gets them nowhere. They end up leapfrogging over each other, trying to attain each other's rights rather than fighting the problem, fighting the system. See More Than Black and White. It talks about how there's this view that only one group faces institutionalized racism, and that isolates them from potential allies. It shouldn't be a competition of who's more oppressed than who, because you just end up making a hierarchy of oppression, which really leads you nowhere because you're not fighting the problem. You won't be able to stop the oppression, overcome the oppression. And if you blame the situation and you fight over who has it worse, like I said, you don't fight the problem at all. The goal is to extinguish the evil that plagues the system, not belittle all the other groups who are fighting the same exact cause. Criticizing the Black-White framework isn't for other groups to find sympathy, like all the different racial, ethnic, gender groups to find sympathy, to find funding. It's to draw awareness to the overall picture. And it even goes beyond racial, ethnic, gender. you don't think about it, but there's all these groups that have been oppressed. Take veterans, for example, who don't get housing, food, water, etc. And going in flow with the packet, it says in the 1970s, racism spread. Obviously, it hadn't gone away, but now it was worse because it was post-war times. There was a worldwide economic recession, and scapegoats were quote unquote needed. And so racism continued to grow, especially as whites feared becoming a minority in the next century. And because white had the power, they used divide and conquer tactics to set themselves up a peg and take everyone down a peg. Instead of uniting against the white supremacist agenda, groups would just isolate themselves and they'd reinforce their communities in a defensive stance. The black-white definition of racism separates people of color who are oppressed. It separates all the people who have experienced oppression in any way, shape, or form. And we should, I worded that weird, we should retain the history of racism, but we shouldn't make it the only focal point. It's a massive part of racism and oppression in America, but making it the only focal point divides all people of color, all people who have been oppressed, instead of uniting into one anti-racist front. Going on to colorblind privilege. White Americans adopt this colorblind view, and you don't really think about it. You think you see things in a better way, but it's really just a fuel to maintain white privilege, as people with this colorblind view don't look at the problems that are still there. And this view pertains that all the inequality isn't there. They see that the color of someone's skin has no effect on their place in society and the socioeconomic hierarchy. And people with this colorblind view only look at the surface, since, quoting the article, it is now illegal for individuals to be denied access to housing, public accommodations, or jobs because of their race. But they're only looking at the surface level. And surprisingly, people genuinely believe the racial issues have been resolved in America. Like, that surprised me. But then again, the IQ in America is like 90 something, and that's 70 is considered like vegetable. So take it as you will. This colorblind ideology does not ignore race, but it ignores all the issues revolving in the background for racial, ethnic, and gender groups. And people see that as consumers, people of color and whites consume all the same items. You're going to the same restaurants, the same clothing stores, you're buying the same cars. And what I think is probably subconscious, it's reinforcing that ideology from seeing all the same stuff, that everyone is treated the same, that everyone has equal opportunities, when that's just not the case. And this kind of gets the feeling I wanted to get across, because I can't do that.
You're doing good. You're doing awesome.
I'm proud to be English. My family have served and we've defended this country and we've been to war for this country.
I'm really patriotic about Bangladesh.
Well, I am 100% Icelandic, yeah, definitely.
This is a Kurdish wedding with my mom in the traditional Kurdish clothes.
We're just proud black, so that's it.
Yeah, I think we are probably the best country in the world, if I'm honest.
Think about other countries and other nationalities in the world. Are there any that you don't feel you get on with well, or you won't like particularly?
Germany. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the Germans.
You might think they're a little bit...
Particularly India and Pakistan, probably, because of the whole, the conflict.
Because I have this side of me that's like, that hates Turkish people. Not people, but the government.
But French?
No. We're just the best, it's just fact.
I'm more important than you. I don't know you, but in my opinion, I am strong and I am more important than a lot of people.
How would you feel about taking a journey based on your DNA?
Yeah, I feel very intrigued.
What could you possibly tell me that I don't know?
So do you know how DNA works? So you get half from mum and half from dad, so 50% from each of them, and they get 50% from their parents, and back and back and back. And all those little bits of your ancestor, they filter down to make you. I need you to spit in this tube for me, and spit up to the little black line.
That's a lot of spit.
Oh.
Right, the story of you is in that tube. What's it gonna tell me?
It's gonna be, oh yeah, you're French, and wait, your grandparents are French, and wait.
100% Bengali.
Solid Iraqi. I'm Cuban.
You're gonna tell me that I'm English, like I've told you.
Jay, can you come down and join us?
I'm a little bit nervous, I have to say.
So you ready to find out your results? Will you read it out to us, please?
Wow, look at me.
Oh my God. Oh, wow. Shit, I didn't expect that.
All of them.
Whoa! No, no.
Caucasus, which was Turkish?
Yeah.
Eastern Europe, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece.
I'm 32% British.
What?
Great Britain, 30%. Can we 5% German?
I'm Irish.
Yeah.
So I'm a Muslim Jew.
Great Britain, 11%. Are you sure these results are mine?
Eastern Europe?
Iceland has definitely moved closer to Europe now.
I'm gonna go a bit far right now, but this should be compulsory. There would be no such thing as like extremism in the world if people knew their heritage like that. Like, who would be stupid enough to think of such thing as like a pure race?
In a way, we're all kind of cousins, in a broad sense. In a much more direct sense, you have a cousin in this room. Turn around and guess who it is. Waj,
Yeah. What's that?
why don't you come down here and meet your cousin?
God, this is a mess.
Did you know that?
I didn't know I did. This is like, my heart's pounding right now, I swear to God. We met.
I'm Jay from everywhere, by the reason of this.
I'm a real man of the world.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you.
So would you like to travel to all of these places?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Oh yeah.
Now for questions. And the reason I had that video is because it kind of answered all these questions for me. Is why do you think Americans believe we can only focus on one social movement at a time? Don't all speak up at once. Okay, I'll take the first one. You guys can get the next two. So I think it's because, as you saw in the video, people are so headstrong. They all have this one-track mind when, as I said earlier, we can work together to make one thing. That's how companies work. We just don't think about it. We don't step back and look at the bigger picture. 2, how can different groups, racial, ethnic, gender, come together to form a united anti-racist front?
I think something that could help solve this is the fact of realizing that we're all connected somehow. We're not just like one person, this person. It's more or less we're all connected in some way, and that we need to understand that this is a we issue, not just an I issue.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I got from the video. And finally, what can be done to resolve colorblind privilege? Okay, I'll take this one too. You know, in the video, I think you just kind of have to hit someone with a 25-pound ball of truth, because that's what breaks people. That's when their mind opens. That's when they step back and they think, oh, it's not the way I think it is. Oh, I'm not entirely French. I'm not just British. I'm all these other things. And I think that's what would make someone open-minded to, you know, looking past colorblind privilege.
Right. Nice job, Isaac. All right. Nice work. So looking at our schedule, you guys ready to get into quick breakout rooms as a group to kind of put together so the idea is like Oppression Olympics is problematic, but retaining history of ways in which certain groups have been historically marginalized or discriminated against or exploited is really important. So I'm going to get you into your groups in breakout rooms. Let me see here. I'm going to share my screen so you can see what I'm doing. Breakout rooms. We're going to have 5. I'm going to let you choose your room, but if it doesn't work, just let me know and I can move you. All right, here's our groups. So Asian Americans, Native Americans, or Indigenous, Hispanic, Latinx, Chicano, American, and this is very American centered, this activity, and also very race centered. So Irish and Italian American and African Black. Oops. Okie dokie. All right, there you go. Let me know if you're having trouble adding yourself. No worries, Martha.
Could you please add me to room 1?
Yes.
Thank
Which
you.
room 1, which never did get renamed. Okay. Let me see.
The Asian Americans one.
Oh, that's right. All right. Ariana should be moved to. Let's see. No. Samantha. Assign to that one.
Professor, could I get put into group 4, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Noah too, right?
Yeah, could you also add me to the Irish Italian, please?
Perfect. Maddie, do you remember what one you're in? Can you add me? Okay, yeah. I thought you were in that one, Ari, but I wasn't sure. Let's see. Maddie. Maddie as well. Okay. All right. All right. How's it going? Good so far? Good. breakout rooms too. Yeah, yeah. All right, I'm gonna pop into groups, to rooms. Can you guys do that or? Okay, want me to put you in some?
I can.
Okay.
Do you want me to pop into some?
Okay, oh, good. All right, so pop into any groups you'd like to kind of see what they got and to help out. Cool.
Sounds good.
So I'm going to Native Americans right now.
And conditions, boarding school and facts, and then like how Indigenous women face more violence. Also Alaskan Native women, which I found as well.
Hey y'all, just have any questions for me? It sounds like you guys are actually doing pretty good.
No questions.
Found stuff about boarding schools.
Yes, so that was horrendous.
Right? Like we don't get taught that.
No, not at all. And to learn about it, it's like, what the hell?
I know. I know.
It's like, apparently they still exist. They're just not, they're more regulated, which is still disturbing.
Yes. Oh, looks great. Oh, good idea. I'm gonna kind of post it for everyone. Yep. 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 Also, I don't know if you guys found out, but like they like historically they like literally kind of first they tried to enslave the Native Americans and put them to work on plantations, but the Native Americans were like, no, and they left. And so then they decided to do genocide. Right. And so they gave like smallpox blankets to them and, you know, kind of did a kind of biological warfare to kind of eradicate them. So any Native Americans still left are definitely survivors of a nationally kind of endorsed genocide, right?
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna mention all the different, well, not all the different massacres, but the biggest one for me at least was the Sand Creek Massacre, where 150 women, children, and elderly were killed. And there's just many massacres to look
So
through.
many, right? And you know, the only reason to kill women and children is to kill like the future of a people, right? Yeah. And the Trail of Tears and like the way it is written in history books is like whites have victories and Native Americans massacre whites, right? It's never like the opposite. You really have to dig or the massacres are like, yep. Yeah. And so they move forward in foot. Do you remember where they moved them from in the Trail of Tears?
I believe it was Oklahoma or like the Midwest.
I think they moved them from like the Carolinas or Georgia all the way to the Midwest on foot. And of like the kind of landscapes are super different, right? So like also like once they move them, how do they know how to live, right? Another kind of way of, you know, eliminating them. All right, I'm gonna kind of get back and check on some other groups. Guys, you seem ready. I'm not worried. All right, breakout rooms. Let's see. Broadcast message to all. Take 1 more minute. Let me join this group real quick. Yes. You guys ready? Awesome. Anything you want to kind of run by me? I feel like there's a ton right here, even right now, of like people who want to become American citizens and all the kind of challenges they face with immigration and detention centers, right? So kind of, all right, I'm gonna close up the rooms. You guys seem ready. All right. Breakout rooms. All right, I'm gonna close rooms and I'm gonna leave this one, leave this. Okay. People are slowly trickling in. Breakout rooms, okay. All right, so you guys ready to, on my phone and my camera turns off when I go to, okay, so no worries, Kayla, I understand. All right, so I think we're gonna do, we're just gonna go kind of down the list. So we're gonna do the Asian American group first. If I'm gonna put on a 5-minute timer, because otherwise I feel like I could let you guys go on forever. We'll be going here forever, okay? So let me, all right, share, and we're gonna do this. All right. All right, Asian American group consists of, where are y'all?
So we found some stuff about the coronavirus and how that has affected Asian Americans, because people have been like doing a lot with hate crimes. I found a quote that said the center of this study of hate and extremism at California State University released findings in early March that showed hate crimes against Asian Americans spiked 149% between 2019 and 2020.
Yeah.
And then also there was the mass shooting at the 3 massage parlors in Atlanta, which led to the death of 8 people, and 6 of them were women of Asian descent.
Yes.
We also wanted to touch on the model minority stereotype, which is basically that all Asians are considered to be like educated and wealthy. And that kind of leaves out all of the ones that are like actually in poverty and don't have the best lives. And a lot of them like have really harsh working conditions, like in sweatshops and things like that. And so they're like considered the model of like the minority that you would want coming into America, because they're perceived as intelligent and wealthy, but that's not the case with all of them. So.
And it's a lot of pressure to maintain that identity, right?
Yes.
And then something that I wanted to touch upon was that the depression that happened in 1876 brought a lot of the, like pretty much started the Chinese must go movement.
Yes.
And it first started in the West Coast and then moved to everywhere. And then the movement was so strong that the Chinese immigration declined from 39,000 in 1882 to only 10 in 1887.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. And then another thing that I found was between 1910 and 1940, the Chinese immigrants were detained at Angel Island, where they were required to go undergo humiliating medical examinations and very detailed interrogations, pretty much asking them everything that they could ask about them.
Anyone else in your group want to go?
I had also seen something that just happened recently within the last week or two, which was a 65-year-old woman who was Asian American was physically and verbally attacked by an unidentified man in Midtown Manhattan.
Is she the one that fought back?
I believe so, but the
Right.
police are doing an investigation, which is
Did anyone do the Japanese internment camps by any chance from World War II? Japanese internment camps, anyone know anything about them? Kind of want to jump in. So the Japanese internment camps were basically America's concentration camps. So while we were fighting the Nazis in World War II, we rounded up all Japanese Americans and we put them in camps out in the desert, I think in Arizona or somewhere down there, Nevada could be, where there was very little food and access to medical resources and very little space. They had to give up all of their belongings and all of their, companies and their businesses and their jobs. They were forcibly moved there and kept there for the war because America was so worried about spies, Japanese spies. This was right after Pearl Harbor as well. So at the same time that we were fighting Nazis for putting people in concentration camps, we did something almost the same. We didn't work them to death, but the mortality rates at these internment camps were super high. So Chinese Americans also, we brought them in to build the railroad, but we wouldn't allow them to become citizens. That is that is the alarm. Okay, all right, I'll stop there. But the Chinese, if you look into the history of the Chinese restaurants, having a restaurant was one of the workarounds, and that's why Chinese food became so ubiquitous in America, is because a lot of ways the only path to citizenship and the only employment Chinese immigrants could get were in the restaurant industry. Anyway, if you're curious. Next analytic response, maybe. Okay, next group is it Latinx, Chicano? Let's do that one next anyway. All right, I'm gonna put this back over.
So oppression began against the Hispanic, Latinx, and Chicano Americans in 1848 when the U.S. won the Mexican-American War, which granted 55% of Mexican territory to the U.S. And in the 19th century, political events made immigration to the U.S. popular. Mob violence was common in the late 19th century. In the early 20th centuries, Latinos killed by mob reached well into the thousands, including children, but history will only report 547 cases. And just for an example, a mob of over 100 people hanged a 14-year-old boy, then dragged his body through the streets of Texas. During the Great Depression, Mexican Americans were discouraged and forbidden from accepting charitable aid, and the US forcibly removed up to 2 million people of Mexican descent from the country, and up to 60% of them were American citizens. And INS deported about 82,000 people during that period. And people with disabilities and active illnesses were removed from hospitals and just dumped at the border.
Others from this group?
One thing that I was surprised to see while researching and everything was the Arizona English only law, which I never had heard about before. And it doesn't even feel like, it doesn't even feel like that long ago, because the law was passed, put into place in 1988. And then it was deemed unconstitutional in 1998. So it took 10 years for it to be unconstitutional. And Arizona is only one of 23 states to make English the state's official language. But in Arizona, it was it had the most restrictive measures, because for an example, an elected official wouldn't be able to speak to their Navajo, I don't know if I'm saying it right, constituents in their native language,
Right.
While on state or business, local business. And then a quote that I took from the New York Times, and it said it required that welfare workers or state park rangers fluent in 6 languages use only English to give aid or directions.
Yep. Yep. It's crazy, right? Because it written into the Constitution is the whole idea of free speech. And lots of white people use that to kind of justify all kinds of stuff, right? And then but whose speech gets to be free in America, right? Right. Yeah. Others from this group? Chicano, Latina.
Yeah, so at the detention centers, I found that 70% of people in immigration detention are held in US detention centers for a month or less. And a good amount of people that were detained, they were released that same exact day. Many abuses that have been documented include medical issues, nutrition issues, legal issues, and solitary confinement. The top 3 states detaining the most immigrants are Texas with 14,000, Louisiana with 4,415, and Arizona with 4,405.
And then I also went into a little more of the conditions inside of the detention centers. So overcrowding is obviously a huge issue. People have seen 40 plus people in a cell made for 8. There's lack of accessible water for the detainees, and the water that they do have is foul and discolored. And because there's lack of access to clean water, every other basic need of sanitation can't really be met. So like women are reporting not being able to have sanitation products for their period. Mothers don't have access to clean their baby bottles. Some of the detainees have reported standing on toilets because of the overcrowding and the access to the bathrooms being limited. So there's lots of illness and disease that's spread rampant throughout these detention centers because A, it's overcrowded, and B, there's no way to control how much of the germs and disease spread throughout the detention centers.
So it's our modern day concentration camps, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And these people have not committed any crimes, right?
Just try to escape for a better life.
Right. And some of them have had have done the migration thing for years and years, because Americans have traditionally brought them in to kind of work seasonal jobs. And so they're just, all right. What's our next group? Native Americans. Yeah.
Okay, some quick general facts before we dive into more specific areas of oppression. Native Americans were not considered United States citizens until June 2nd, 1924. The government holds over 100,000 leases to 56 million acres of tribal lands that have tons of resources, but these lands have unfortunately been exploited at the tribe's expense. 22% of the 5.2 million American Indians live on reservations. Reservations, for those who don't know, are tracts of land with living conditions that are now comparable to third and fourth world countries. And the average life expectancy of many American Indians is 5 years less than national average. And they have far more health problems than the average American. Isaac, if you want to step in and.
Yeah. Additionally, there's all the different massacres you can think of. The biggest one for me was the Sand Creek Massacre, in which 150 women, children, and elderly were killed, which, as the professor said when she came into our group, was to essentially kill off their future. And there's just so many more massacres.
Yep. And turning to the Trail of Tears forced many Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Creeks to move westward on foot. Most of them started from the East Coast and had to move very much west. They were often in chains and had little or no food and supplies, and even some Indians in the north as well were forced to relocate. Disease and starvation were rampant, and thousands died along the way, giving the torturous journey obviously the name Trail of Tears. As we were talking with Professor Casey Williams, Many Native Americans also faced genocide through biological warfare, such as giving them blankets of smallpox, as well as many other diseases when colonization happened. Turning to reservation conditions, many households are currently overcrowded, and many Native Americans only earn Social Security, disability, or veterans income. The scarcity of jobs and lack of economic opportunity mean that, depending on the reservation, 4 to 8 out of 10 adults are unemployed. And among those who are employed, many are earning below poverty wages. There are 90,000 homeless or underhoused Indian families, and that 30% of Indigenous housing is overcrowded and less than 50% of it is connected to a public sewer. There are many other health risks that go with this, as well as like heart disease, like the leading cause of death for Native Americans currently. And they are 500% more likely to die from tuberculosis. And this was from a study from 2011, which obviously shows that there's still very much an issue. Moving on to boarding school facts. Parents were usually coerced and intimidated into allowing their children to attend these boarding schools. And if parents continued to refuse, some of the children were often kidnapped and forced into these boarding schools. They were treated as military camps, so there are obviously strict schedules, uniforms were enforced, genders were separated, and corporal punishment was practiced. Many of them were forced to cut their hair and wear, during this time, Victorian era clothing. During school breaks, Indigenous children were often hired out to white families to avoid going back home and relearning their culture. This program was obviously incredibly exploitative, and children were used as a source of domestic or agricultural labor against their will. And the conditions at almost all off-reservation boarding schools were later found to be consistently horrendous. According to World Without Genocide at Carlisle alone, Carlisle is one of the schools, there were almost 200 kids buried in the school cemetery, and some of them have died as a result of physical abuse, while others succumbed to various outbreaks of disease. As for women, Indigenous women and Alaskan Native women, more than 4 in 5 have experienced violence in their lifetime, and more than 1 in 3 experienced violence in the past year, according to a new report from the NIJ funded study. Part of the study looked at how to prevent psychological aggression and physical violence by intimate partners. Stalking and sexual violence were among Indigenous women and men alike. It also examined the perpetrator's race and impact of the violence.
And traditionally, they have not been, like no one's investigated their deaths, right? Or their disappearance.
Right. They were it's kind of brushed off to the side.
Because like supposedly law enforcement has no jurisdiction on reservations, right? I don't know about you guys, but my head is spinning. Oh my God. That's like a good alarm, like crimes against humanity. Whoop, whoop. All right. So we have 2 groups left. We have Irish Americans and then African Americans. Here we go. Get ready. Brace yourselves for more horrible facts and statistics and pieces of history. One of the discussion posts from today is to kind of post something that you learned from another group's presentation. So make sure to kind of keep your ear out for like just one thing that kind of popped out at you that was just horrible. Or startling or surprising. Okay. Oops, hold on one sec. All right, so Irish American and Italian American group.
So right off the bat, Irish immigrants came to the United States in the 1840s during the potato famine. And right away they faced a lot of anti-Catholic bigotry. Traditionally in like Irish heritage, it's very like religion is very prominent, especially Catholic. There's a lot of things you can compare that to today in the sense that there aren't many Irish Catholic churches around the country. It's more of, you see Italian Catholic churches, Portuguese Catholic churches, at least near me. And in the War of 1848, there were several Irish battalions that actually fought on the side of Mexico to fight for their oppression in the United States, which was interesting for me to find out because I had no idea about that going into it.
Yeah.
One thing about our group is that I feel like, at least in today's society, our group faces the least oppression now.
It's important,
So-
kind of.
Yeah, that's very
It's important to
right?
kind of own that, right?
Yeah, no, and especially me being Irish, I like acknowledge that, but I feel like a lot of the stuff we were able to find took place more so in the 19th, early 20th century.
Right. Anyone kind of want to add to Kyle's stuff?
Just some of the things that like they were kind of discriminated for when they first came over, what like had to do with they were viewed as like lazy, dirty, like drunks basically. that, you know,
Hypersexualized, right? Because they had so many children.
and that like they were aggressive and would get into fights and promoted violence, I guess you could say.
That was the stereotype. Yeah. Yeah. They were like, they were discriminated from a bunch of like jobs, right? So they worked at primarily low paying, exploitative jobs. Yeah. Others from this group?
Regarding like the religion, they both, like Irish Americans and the Italian Americans, they had the same religion. So when they came over, they were all Catholic. And so they were very looked down for that. And when I was doing my research, I kind of like found this one story that because of their religious beliefs, a lot of like Italians were harmed or their property was damaged. Another thing that I found is that some Italians were lynched for their religious beliefs, which I thought was absolutely crazy and had no idea that was a thing, or that would have been like such a big problem.
There's that scientific racism, right? That's like the Irish and the Italian were like less human than, traditional Europeans, right?
And when they both moved over to America, they also did not have a lot of job opportunities. So it was very hard for them to survive in that manner.
Also, kind of going off of what Sam said about like the whole job opportunities thing, they also, like a lot of like Italian and Irish people had to change their name, or like when they got here, they like changed their name to become more like Americanized. So it's like, for example, like say if it was like an O in a name, for it to be like an accent more related to like their culture, they'll change it to like an I or something that sounds more American. So that way they could have better job opportunities and like just more or less a better life overall.
So like changing it to consonant endings, right?
Yeah.
Like my grandfather's name was Berta, but like you can tell like when his parents immigrated from Italy, it was probably something like Berticelli or something, right?
Yeah, for example, like my last name, I found out it was supposed to be an O at the end, so it's supposed to be Pizzo instead of what it is.
Sorry. Yes, good, excellent. All right, last group. Are you guys ready for this? Last group, and then we'll vote on who gets to win the Oppression Olympics, and then we'll talk about why no one wins the Oppression Olympics. Okay, all right. Final group, African Americans.
So the first thing that I kind of looked at was the 1992 LA riots, because it reminded me a lot of what we kind of experienced last summer with George Floyd. While Rodney King, the man attacked in 1992 by 4 policemen, he did not die. He did suffer severe permanent brain damage, as well as a skull fracture, broken bones, and teeth. So the riot happened, or I'm sorry, the attack happened on April 30th, 1992. And when video footage came out and the acquittal was announced of the police officers involved, it was, of the police officer involved, there was riots that broke out for 5 days straight. And cops ignored the 911 calls for hours. I believe it was about 3 hours that the riots went on before any police were dispatched. They kind of were just driving through the scenes, watching people being beaten close to death, and just honest bystanders were being beaten because people were just so mad at the violence they had seen of Rodney King. And so Rodney King actually,
that was just the recorded one, right? And this is back in 92, when to record something, you needed to like get that big like video camcorder, right? You couldn't just whip out your phone, right?
yeah, right. It wasn't great footage either, but it was very obvious that he was being beaten beyond what was reasonable. And he actually ended up addressing the public on the third day saying, people, I just want to say, can we all get along? Can we get along? Because he didn't want this response. He just wanted some more equality.
So going off of that, we also looked into the Tulsa Race Massacre, which happened in 1921, and it included mobs of white residents that had weapons from the city officials, and they attacked Black residents and Black-owned businesses of the Greenwood district in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This was one of the worst incidents of racial violence in the US history, but it's also one of the least known, even though that hundreds of people were killed and it left thousands of people homeless.
And it was because that they were economically successful, right? They called Tulsa the Black Wall Street, and they were doing good. And so, Yep.
And then also we have a little bit about segregation. So that was obviously very prominent. And when you think about it, it really wasn't that long ago. Like I can still ask my mom and she remembers where you had to use a certain water fountain based off the color of your skin in the schools. And she can remember the bathrooms were even different for a small period of time. And she went locally to Auburn High School, and there was only maybe 1 or 2 Black students. And she remembers that they were each other's only friends. They didn't talk to anybody else. Her father would tell her that they were just dirty, and a bunch of other just racial slurs like that. And so it really isn't that long ago, seeing as how my mother can remember that growing up and throughout school. And conditions were just terrible. Years ago, even though we've adapted from slavery, there was still slavery where people literally owned other people just to use them for their work and labor. And even after slavery ended, there was still sharecropping, which was a way to get around the laws. Basically, the white landowners would offer these Black families who had nothing because they have been slaves for generations, so they don't know what else they could do in life. And they basically offered them small plots of their own land and told them that they would kind of rent it to them. And after the harvest came, they would just pay them in crop. However, they didn't really tell them how much interest would be taxed onto this. And they just kept offering them new items like food, equipment, and fertilizer. And the tab just ended up tallying up. And these tenant families ended up in high debt. And they were just kind of still locked onto this land, regardless of slavery ending. They were still just locked and prevented from leaving this land in all different forms of ways because of this.
Yep. Slavery by another name, right?
Basically.
And the interest rates were like 300%, right? 400.
Yeah, it was absolutely ridiculous. And they weren't told that they were that high.
And of course, slavery. Is it 30 million or more, or is it 300 million or more people probably were lost in the between the Atlantic slave trade and slavery, right?
I believe it was 300, but you can't quote me either.
Toni Morrison has it like as the dedication to Beloved. Like, I think it is 300 million or more. Low estimates are 300 million people, right? Yeah. So that was a lot. I don't know. This is a new format for class. This class was kind of an experiment. What did you guys think? Ugh, that's a lot of atrocity. I am emotionally tapped out. Take a minute, write down one thing from just like that you like that surprised you that you didn't know about in the past on discussion 14.15 point, whatever discussion we're on. Sorry. Oh, no, go away. Let's see. I mean, it's important to remember the history, but like, I feel like I get like almost like desensitized. Like, yeah, yeah. That's right. Good. Keep going. And then, kind of. So here's oppression bingo. You can find all kinds of stuff, kind of like, sort of, like making fun of and also trying to draw attention to this kind of stuff. Like if you're someone who's kind of trying to talk about like the oppressions you faced and some of these, you know, responses, like you can almost play bingo, like you're overly sensitive, but I don't find this offensive, but this happens to me too. You're just looking for something to be offended by. Stereotypes exist because there's truth in them. It's like to think about all of these kinds of responses and microaggressions. Yeah, so keep posting if you haven't, and then we'll do our kind of debrief of the groups. Which one do you think wins? Native Americans, Asian Americans, African Americans, Irish Americans, Chicana, and Latinx. What do you think? Which group wins for you guys? Who has been the most oppressed? Let's not play that game, actually, right? Because all of the oppressions are horrible, right? So I'm actually gonna, so the historical or the Oppression Olympics pits historically oppressed people against each other. Even if you win, the only people that actually win is the people in power, the dominant group, the people who have always been in power, because they've distracted you from attacking the power structures, and now you're just kind of fighting against each other. So instead, join the anti-oppression Olympics, right? Which prevents or which allows for unification that will finally let us change these power structures. A lot of ways to do that is through kind of solidarity. Try to challenge people when they say things like, I don't see race, because although there is no biological foundation. And this goes back to kind of Isaac's video, like about how like, you know, we're all mixed already, right? We all have surprising things in our biology, and biology is not a simple kind of like indicator of race, although there's no real biological foundation, and you know, stuff like that. And although it's socially constructed, it has real effects on people's lives, right? Race does. And so you can't, like, this is a really good kind of graphic that I always kind of look at, like, I don't see race. And then it's like, well, then you don't see the kind of disproportionate violence that is visited on certain communities and certain groups, right? So you can't, like, when you hear, I don't see race, try to put pressure on that. Yeah. And then what can we do instead? Equality, problematic. Equity, even there, like really kind of what we want is justice. I love this picture. This is one of my favorite pictures. Instead of equality, which kind of treats everyone as if like they have the same needs and the same kind of advantages and the same disadvantages, equity kind of tailors things to that. But what we really, really want is justice where the systemic barrier has been removed. The cause of inequality was addressed. So like, we should probably acknowledge our privilege, try to be aware of our own biases, call ourselves out when we say something racist, know that like we're always working to improve ourselves, and try to kind of get rid of that kind of black-white binary thinking about like, you're either racist or you're good. Like try to kind of always kind of work on being more of an ally, work towards solidarity, try to not be defensive. Be open to discussing your attitudes and biases. I think you guys are all there because you're in this class, but keep questioning them. try to question and educate others, because oftentimes people of color are asked to educate like everyone all the time, right? So like you've taken this class, you're educated now, you can speak to these issues. So don't always leave it to the people who are always kind of doing the work of explaining. And don't expect code switching, which is like people being able to kind of speak in a way that makes you more comfortable. All right. Sorry, Alicia and Josiah, I'm gonna kind of turn it over to you guys now.
No worries. That was really good. I like enjoyed sitting here, and Josiah and I were like speaking like while everyone was kind of sharing their facts and their history and everything that they were researching and stuff like that. And we popped into the Asian American group, and they did really well too as well. We didn't get a chance to pop into everybody, but it was nice to hear what you all had to say. So we're happy to be here. But we'll kind of just jump in really quickly, a little bit about us. So my name is Alicia McKenzie. I'm the new director for the Center of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So it's a new title, new name, same kind of focus, but a little bit more intentional with some of our goals and our mission for the center. And hopefully we will actually like physically have a center up and running soon, hopefully within like the next year. But that is the idea. And Josiah, he can introduce himself.
Hey, I mean, I'm looking at like everyone in the class. I'm like, oh, I know a lot of these people. But great job today. I'm the graduate assistant for the Center of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. But yeah, back on like really good things today. You guys touched on a bunch of great points, and you guys did a really, really good job. And just how Professor Aaron was just talking, like, don't always leave it to the people of color to like educate. You guys know some of these things now. You did your research now. Be a part of that change. Don't just allow things to just like these conversations to just blow past you. Like, oh, like this doesn't really affect me. Like I'm just gonna like stay out of it. Like no, like be that change and break that cycle.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, like great job, and see you guys around. Stop by the center. We love having guests and people. So and we could continue these conversations if you want to go a little deeper here at the center. So we're here for you guys if you need anything.
Mm-hmm. And something too that we just want to, or that I want to jump in and say is, you all were doing the research, you all had the conversation, you were challenging each other a little bit, which was great, right? And so the conversation doesn't and shouldn't stay in this space. The reason why you're in this class is to educate yourself and learn more. So now that it's your responsibility to go out there and share what you've learned in here, right? And that's the difference between being an ally and being an accomplice. And so for me, I'm really looking for people who are going to be accomplices. And that's the people that are going to, put their neck on the line, put their privilege on the line, in order to uplift and empower other individuals who don't have that same privilege as you, right? And so that's the difference when we're thinking about an ally. An ally is someone who's going to get the education and know what they have to do, but maybe not necessarily do it, but they're educating themselves on that. An accomplice is someone who's going to get in the mud, in the dirt, in the grit with you, and really use their privilege to empower someone else. So, identifying what those privileges are that you have, identifying those biases that you may have, and then challenging those and using that privilege to have those conversations with individuals who are not in this class, right? Who aren't having these conversations, who may use microaggressions or some racial slurs or things like that, right? Like we know that these people exist, and sometimes they may be family friends, but it's up to us to really have those conversations and continue educating people outside of this room. And in addition to all of that, if you ever, like Josiah said, want to continue the conversation, or ever have questions or anything, you just want to chill or hang out, you definitely can come over to the center. We're in headquarters right now. And so the door's always open, the TV's always on, and you're more than welcome to kind of come in. If you ever want to reach out to me directly or Josiah, you definitely can do that as well. I feel like we're pretty chill, so feel free to just, connect with us or reach out whenever necessary. But great job.
So I enjoyed today's class, and I think you guys did an excellent job. And yeah, the center should be probably would be a safe place, right? To kind of, so you can go and just be around like-minded people as well. So sometimes you don't have to be in that battle mindset all the time, I would think. If you do want to question others, like one thing I've always found pretty effective and non-confrontational is to kind of play dumb. Like, why do you think that joke is funny?
Yeah.
Make them explain it. And this would also like, it will hopefully also not put you at risk as well. Go ahead, Alicia.
No, yeah, I was just agreeing, and something I always say too is like, well, what do you mean by that? So that it kind of like flips that, whatever it is that they're talking about, it makes them kind of take a step back and be like, okay, wait, what do I mean? Or okay, something I said may have been problematic. Let me double check, because there's always intent versus impact. And so that's another thing that we want to keep in mind as well when people are talking, right? So their intention may not be to offend somebody, but the impact is that it did. And so being able to identify what that is, and then correcting it and moving forward from it. We all make mistakes, and that's fine, as long as we're learning from those mistakes, correcting them, and actively trying not to continue making that same mistake moving forward.
Yeah. Let's all be better. And that's solidarity, right? To kind of, help each other out. All right. So for next time, I actually just changed the home screen. The next unit is going to be all institutions. So next time, Jared is going to present on work and work inequalities. And then there's what's coming up for us. We're cruising in on the end. Hooray. This semester. Woo. If you haven't got your participant observation in, let me know when you think you can get it, or just get it in when you can. Okay. Thank you everyone for an awesome class today. I will see you.
Thank you.
On, Tuesday, and have a great weekend.
Thank you, Professor. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Alicia.
good Easter.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming.
No problem. Thanks so much for having us. Really appreciate it. They did great.
Yeah.
There's a good group. Yeah. But it is, I don't know if I will do a class like this. I don't know. I have to think about it, because it was like overload for me, at least.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Like, especially like 5 minutes to do kind of like, I don't know.
But at least it kind of gives them a glimpse into different areas, right? So different things and experiences. And then like, maybe if it like sparks an interest, they'll go and do some more research and figure something out. Maybe they're like, oh, I never heard of like the Japanese concentration camps. Like, let me look into that a little bit more, or something like that. So, yeah, it's a lot. But you're doing great.
Thanks. We wanted to kind of also like ask you if you see any areas ever that I can kind of improve, because I know I'm like a white straight lady. I'm on gender and diversity. But like, so I try to be aware, but I'm not always aware of all my own biases. So.
It's okay. It's all progress.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that's the first step, is like, being aware of that. So like, if you're aware of that, and like, oh, like, yes, like, this is coming from someone who's white and straight woman, like,
yeah, I think always owning that is important.
Yeah.
When doing the work, like owning that in that conversation. Like, I understand that I am a cis white female and blah, blah, blah. Like, you know what I mean? And owning that, because then it allows also too for the students in the class to be able to own their whiteness, right? Or the different levels of privilege that they may have when having those conversations.
Yeah. So I'm sure you'll see me once I am able to leave the house in the center.
Yes.
Once I can, once I'm free.
I know. Once I can't wait. Like, I see the light, then it starts to dim, and then it gets brighter, and then it dims. I'm like, okay, I see the light is at the end of the tunnel. We're almost there.
Right.
It doesn't help the weather. Like, suddenly it's like winter again. It's like,
I know, it's snowing. It was on my drive in today. It was like flurrying. Like, literally, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. It was just like 70 degrees last week.
I know. Like, we were like at least just getting out to the backyard, but no longer. It's like
back inside we go.
I know. All right.
So thank you again for having us. We really appreciate just being able to sit in the class and observe and just connect more with the students, and for us to get out there. I know Josiah knows a lot of people because he obviously was a student, but I don't know anyone. So like, it's great for me to get out there.
See some names, see some faces.
Right. Exactly. So thank you again.
No problem. Okay. Any questions or comments? Just let me know. I'm always around online.
Got you, definitely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a great
Bye.
weekend.
Bye. Yes, have a great weekend.
You as well.